Advocate Tembeka Ngcukaitobi has argued that the late Zambian President Edgar Lungu has explicitly opposed any involvement by current Zambian President Hakainde Hichilema in his funeral arrangements, citing long-standing personal and political tensions between the two. Ngcukaitobi further told the Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein that the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria erred in the finding that the Zambian government had established a clear legal right to repatriate Lungu's remains. The case comes as Zambia prepares to mark the first anniversary of Lungu's death next week, with a dispute over where and how he should be laid to rest still unresolved. SABC News reporter Kani Mapanga is following court proceedings and joins us live. A very good afternoon to you, Kani, as we observe how long this process has taken to just finally lay the former Zambian president to rest, really looking at the bickering and the conflict that has taken place in the interim. What has come out of those proceedings?
Indeed. Good afternoon to you, Paul, and to the viewers at home. Well, essentially, it's still going to be a bit of a wait for both parties on that question of where the late former Zambian President Edgar Lungu will be buried, as the Supreme Court of Appeal has just reserved judgment into that particular question, and whether or not the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria erred in its judgment, which basically favoured the Zambian government in terms of its public interest litigation, in terms of the Zambian public law, with respect to whether or not they were entitled to repatriate the remains of Lungu for the purposes of a state funeral and burial. But before we get to those arguments, I think it's an opportune time to speak to both parties, because it is very rare to have both the family spokesperson and a government representative, that is the Attorney General, Mr. Kabesha, and then of course Makebi Zulu. And I think the first question, which I'll direct to both, is why this matter could not be resolved outside of the courtroom, and we're now in a position where you're just a week away from the first anniversary of the passing of the late former Zambian president. How come it is that these two parties, which are actually get along quite well in this particular setting, could not find each other on this issue? Maybe I should start here with Ms. Kabesha.
Thank you very much. And what I can say is I wasn't part of the negotiators, but I was always asking that if we could come up with an agreement which would be reduced into a consent judgment, so that we shouldn't have reached this far. But as to why they could not conclude the matter and give us the structure of what was agreed, so that we could introduce, reduce it into a consent order, that I'm not privy to the reasons why they could not agree.
I think the question has since become moot, looking at where we are right now. And every viewer out there is aware of the constant updates that we would give the nation and the world at large, as to how that every time we go to what looked like an agreement, there was always something that was cooking on the side of the government that abrogated what seemed like an agreement relating to this particular matter. It's more a matter of hubris than anything else, but the family has always been willing to engage until there was a problem with trust being broken at any given point. But nonetheless, we're here now, and the very basis on which the Zambian government took the matter to court in the High Court, based on the former President's Benefits Act, they have since abandoned that particular argument here in the Supreme Court of Appeal, leaving it to an issue of an agreement, and everybody knows what the status of that agreement is as far as the family is concerned, and how that every time the family made particular proposals, there was always a change on the part of the government as to what they prefer to happen. And the matter that they brought to court is that they are, as a matter of right, entitled to bury the former president, to the exclusion of the family. That's a judgment that we sought to set aside.
Is the position still that the current president shouldn't preside over the funeral, or are you completely out of that discussion? I think that is the clarity that the Supreme Court of Appeal was trying to seek from counsel today.
Well, the matter that is before court has got nothing to do with the current status of the family, but what transpired in the High Court. Whether the precedent that the High Court sought to to set is a proper precedent in law, and we seek the interpretation of the law so that the death of the former president does not constitute what would be a bad precedent that excludes the rights of the family. So the family is here to assert its rights, and upon those rights being asserted, maybe, just maybe, we may be in a position to engage with the government so that an appropriate manner of setting or putting to rest the former president is agreed on.
And just lastly, we have to wrap, Mr. Kabesha. What is the position of the current president with respect to his participation in this particular funeral?
Well, where we have reached now, we can only leave it to the court. Whatever the court will decide, the government will follow what the court will say. It's not about who will be attending or who will be participating, but definitely will follow what the court will decide.
All right, thank you very much, Attorney General Malila Kabesha, and of course the family spokesperson Makebi Zulu, giving us their positions on this long protracted battle into the final resting place of the late former Zambian president, that is President Edgar Lungu. Of course, the Supreme Court of Appeal will take its time to give that judgment, although they do recognize the urgency of the matter. Now all eyes are on the appellate courts, if they fail to find one another, to decide whether or not the Zambian government will be entitled to repatriate the former president for the purposes of a state funeral and burial, or will the family be given that right to bury him here in South Africa? It's over to you in studio.
Very well. Thank you very much. Kenny Mapanga giving us a sense of the latest developments in that court matter, which we continue to keep a very close eye on.